I still remember how my husband's eyes widened with shock when he saw me walk into the charity gala on his brother's arm. Just 6 months earlier, he'd begged me on his knees to understand his affair and accept the baby she was carrying. Family is everything, he'd said as if I wasn't family. What he never expected was that I'd take those words to heart, just not the way he intended. And now, as his mistress spilled champagne down her designer dress in shock, I finally felt the weight of 8 years of lies lift from my shoulders. Everyone envied my life. That's what makes this story so hard to believe. Even I didn't see it coming. Alexander and I met during our junior year at Columbia. I was studying interior design. He was the ambitious business major with plans to revolutionize his family's small real estate company. We were the perfect match, my creativity complementing his business acumen. When he proposed on graduation day, I thought I'd won the lottery of life. Together we'll build an empire, he promised, slipping his grandmother's diamond onto my finger. Barrett and Barrett, equal partners. That was the first lie. For 8 years I poured everything into being Mrs. Alexander Barrett. I designed every office, staged every luxury property, hosted every crucial dinner party that helped Barrett Developments grow from a modest family business into one of the most prestigious real estate firms on the East Coast. My own career dreams gathered dust while I became the perfect corporate wife. Just temporary, Alexander would say, kissing my forehead. Once we're established, you can start your own design firm. I promise. Our Fifth Avenue penthouse appeared in Architectural Digest. We vacationed in places that required helicopters to reach. At charity functions, wives pulled me aside to whisper, "How did you get so lucky?" What they couldn't see were the fertility treatments that consumed 3 years of our marriage. The devastating miscarriage in year 5 that left me hollow. The way Alexander's eyes gradually stopped meeting mine when we discussed trying again. "Perhaps it's not meant to be," his mother suggested during one of her unannounced visits, examining me over her teacup like a disappointing investment. "The Barrett name needs strong heirs. I should have recognized the warning signs." Alexander's younger brother Ethan was the only one who ever asked how I was really doing. The family disappointment who'd chosen humanitarian architecture over the family business. Ethan visited rarely but always noticed what others missed. "You seem tired, Sophia," he said during his last visit 2 years ago. "Are you happy?" I'd laughed it off. Of course I was happy. I had everything. Then came the late nights. The business trips that multiplied. The cologne I didn't recognize. Standard clichés that I was too trusting to question. For our 8th anniversary, I planned a surprise dinner at home. I spent the day preparing his favorite meal, decorating our terrace with lights, chilling the champagne we'd saved from our wedding. By 11, the candles had burned down to stubs and the food was cold. When he finally stumbled in at midnight, his collar carried a smudge of deep red lipstick. My signature color was pink. "Client dinner," he muttered, not meeting my eyes. "Sorry, I forgot." 2 days later I found the text messages. Not because I was snooping but because his phone kept buzzing during breakfast and I glanced down thinking it might be important. "Victoria, miss you already. Last night was incredible. Victoria, when can you get away again? Victoria, I need you." "Who's Victoria?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady as I placed his phone next to his coffee cup. Alexander didn't even flinch. "New executive assistant. We're in the middle of the Westchester development. She's just anxious about the timeline." Another lie delivered with perfect composure. That's when I knew it wasn't his first. I hired the private investigator the next day. A woman with kind eyes who squeezed my hand and said, "I'm sorry you're going through this." She didn't promise anything, but 3 days later she delivered a manila envelope that changed everything. The photos showed Alexander and a young woman with sleek dark hair entering a downtown apartment building. More photos of intimate dinners. Theater outings. A weekend in the Hamptons at a friend's beach house. Victoria Chin, the investigator's report read. 24 years old. Executive assistant at Barrett Developments for 13 months. Previous employment. None. 1 year. He'd been having an affair for an entire year while I was still researching new fertility options. While I was redesigning our guest bedroom as a potential nursery. I placed the photos on our bed and waited, the perfect grieving wife in a designer dress. When Alexander came home, his face went from confusion to recognition to calculation in seconds. "It's not what it looks like," he started but couldn't quite commit to the lie. Isn't it? I asked, surprised by how detached I felt. Because it looks like you've been sleeping with your assistant while I've been trying to have your baby. He sat heavily on the edge of our bed. I've been under tremendous pressure. You've been so focused on getting pregnant. Victoria is just what, Alexander? Just young? Just convenient? Just not your wife. He had the audacity to look wounded. I made a mistake. It didn't mean anything. I picked up the photo of them kissing in Central Park. A year-long mistake doesn't mean nothing. I didn't know then that this conversation was just the tremor before the earthquake. That within 24 hours, my perfect marriage wouldn't just be broken. It would be shattered beyond recognition. I slept in the guest room that night, my mind racing between fury and devastation. By morning, I'd decided to give Alexander one chance to come clean about everything. One opportunity to salvage what little respect I still had for him. I found him in the kitchen, impeccably dressed as always, drinking espresso while reviewing documents as if nothing had happened. I want the complete truth, I said, sitting across from him. How long exactly? Why her? And what happens now? Alexander sighed, setting down his cup. 14 months. It started at the holiday party. As for why? He shrugged. She admires me. Doesn't question my decisions. Doesn't pressure me about babies and family planning constantly. His words sliced through me. So this is my fault. Because I wanted the family you promised me. That's not what I... The doorbell interrupted his excuse. Alexander froze, checking his watch. Expecting someone? I asked. No, I'll handle it. But our housekeeper had already opened the door. I heard a woman's voice, young, demanding, and then footsteps approaching the kitchen. When Victoria Chin walked in, two things became immediately clear. She was much younger than her photos suggested, barely out of college. And she was unmistakably pregnant. You weren't answering my calls, she said to Alexander, barely acknowledging my presence. We need to talk about the appointment tomorrow. The room tilted slightly. I gripped the counter to steady myself. Victoria, Alexander said carefully, this isn't a good time. She finally looked at me, her expression a perfect blend of defiance and false sympathy. Oh. I thought you would have told her by now. Told me what? My voice sounded distant even to my own ears. Alexander stood between us, a pathetic attempt at damage control. Victoria is 5 months pregnant. The floor seemed to drop from under me. 5 months. While I was undergoing my final round of fertility treatments. Congratulations, I managed, the word acid on my tongue. Victoria placed her hand on her stomach in a territorial gesture. Alex promised we'd figure this out together. All of us. I turned to my husband, waiting for him to correct this absurdity. Instead, he ran his hand through his perfectly styled hair. His tell when he's uncomfortable. Sophia, we need to discuss options. Options? I echoed. The Barrett name means something in this city. A messy divorce, a scandal. It would damage everything we've built. Victoria nodded earnestly. The company's reputation affects everyone. I laughed, a harsh sound I didn't recognize. I don't give a damn about the company's reputation right now. Alexander's phone rang, his mother's ringtone. He answered on speaker, not bothering with pleasantries. Is she being reasonable? Margaret Barrett's crisp voice filled the kitchen. You knew? I asked, though I already knew the answer. The Barretts protected their own. Sophia dear, my mother-in-law replied. Family is everything. This child is a Barrett regardless of the circumstances. You've always wanted to be a mother. The implication hung in the air. I should be grateful for this opportunity, given my apparent failure to produce an heir myself. Let me make sure I understand, I said slowly. You want me to quietly accept my husband's affair and raise his child with his mistress? Alexander exchanged glances with Victoria. The guest house has a separate entrance. Victoria could live there until the baby is born. We'd work out an arrangement. An arrangement, I repeated, my voice hollow. Think of it as modern family planning, Victoria suggested with the audacity to smile. Many cultures have. Get out of my house. Victoria looked to Alexander, who nodded slightly. Wait in the car. I'll handle this. When she left, Alexander's demeanor changed entirely. Be practical, Sophia. You signed a prenup. If you leave, you get nothing from the past 8 years. Is that a threat? It's reality. And there's more at stake than you realize. He lowered his voice. The company is facing some financial challenges. Your father's banking connections are keeping several projects afloat. If you leave, those connections go with you. The pieces click together. So you need me. We need each other. We always have. And if I refuse? His eyes hardened. Then I'll have no choice but to protect what's mine. After he left for the office, I collapsed on the kitchen floor, trembling. 8 years of marriage reduced to a business transaction. My husband's child growing inside another woman. The choice between public humiliation or private degradation. My phone buzzed with a text from Alexander's mother. Lunch tomorrow. We'll discuss how to handle this delicately. As if there were a delicate way to handle complete betrayal. I spent the rest of the day in a daze, moving through our apartment, touching things I'd chosen with such care. The Italian marble countertops, the hand-knotted rugs, the art we'd collected from our travels. All of it suddenly felt like props in a play where I'd misunderstood my role. That night, I packed a small bag with essentials. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't spend another night under the same roof as Alexander. I would pretend to consider his grotesque proposal while figuring out my next move. As I was leaving, I noticed Alexander's home office door ajar. Inside, I found financial documents he'd left scattered on his desk. Balance sheets showing alarming discrepancies. A letter from the SEC requesting information. And a copy of our prenuptial agreement with sections highlighted. I took photos of everything. My husband had clearly been planning for all contingencies. It seemed only fair that I should do the same. The lobby of the Four Seasons felt both extravagant and anonymous. Exactly what I needed. I checked in under my maiden name, ignoring the curious glance from the receptionist who undoubtedly recognized me from charity circuit photos. Manhattan's elite formed a small village, and news of my temporary relocation would reach Alexander by evening. Let him wonder. Let him squirm. After a sleepless night, I ventured to a small coffee shop in Soho, far from our usual Upper East Side haunts. I needed space to think, to breathe air untainted by Barrett influence. Sophia. I looked up, coffee halfway to my lips, to find Ethan Barrett standing before my table. Alexander's younger brother looked nothing like the polished real estate mogul I'd married. His dark hair was slightly too long, his button-down rumpled from travel, his expression genuinely concerned rather than carefully curated. Ethan. I didn't know you were in town. My voice sounded brittle even to my own ears. Just got in yesterday. He hesitated. Mind if I join you? I gestured to the empty chair. How long has it been? 2 years. 26 months, but who's counting? His smile faded. I ran into Victoria Chin at the family office this morning. Interesting development. The way he said it, without judgment or expectation, broke something inside me. Before I could stop myself, I was telling him everything. The affair, the pregnancy, Alexander's ultimatum, my midnight escape. Ethan listened without interrupting, his expression darkening only when I mentioned the financial troubles. That tracks with why Dad called me home, he said finally, running a hand through his hair, the one mannerism he shared with Alexander. He mentioned irregularities that needed family attention. You haven't been involved with Barrett developments for years. No, but I still own 15%. And unlike everyone else in the family, I actually read the quarterly reports. He leaned forward. Sophia, how much do you know about the financials? Only what I saw last night in Alexander's office. There were discrepancies in the accounts, letters from the SC. And your name? Was it on any of the documents? My stomach dropped. Some of them. But I don't handle the business side, I never have. Ethan's expression turned grave. Alexander has been using your signature, hasn't he? On documents you never saw. The cafe suddenly felt too warm, too crowded. How would you know that? Because he did the same to me. It's why I left. Ethan's voice was soft but bitter. 3 years ago, I discovered my signature on loan documents for properties I knew nothing about. When I confronted him, Alexander convinced our parents I was being paranoid, trying to undermine him out of jealousy. I remembered that time, how Alexander had painted Ethan as unstable, resentful. How easily I'd believed my husband over his brother. I'm sorry, I whispered. I didn't know. You weren't meant to. None of us were. Ethan pulled out his phone, scrolling to find something. I've been tracking some suspicious patterns. Projects that break ground with great fanfare but stall after initial investments pour in. Properties flipped between shell companies to inflate values. He showed me a spreadsheet that meant little to me until he pointed out a recurring name. Chin Holdings. Victoria's family? Her uncle. Small-time developer until 2 years ago when he suddenly had capital to partner on major Barrett projects. The implication was clear. Alexander hadn't just betrayed me emotionally, he was potentially involved in financial fraud and I might be legally implicated. I need somewhere to stay, I said suddenly. Somewhere Alexander wouldn't think to look. Ethan didn't hesitate. I have a beach house in Montauk. Technically it's still in the family portfolio, but I'm the only one who uses it. You'd be safe there while we figure this out. Unless you'd rather handle this alone? The genuine question in his voice touched me. Unlike Alexander, Ethan wasn't presuming to take control. I don't even know what this is yet, I admitted. First, it's protecting you legally. Second, it's making sure Alexander and whoever he's working with don't drain the company my grandparents built. Ethan's jaw tightened. Third, it's making sure you get what you deserve after 8 years of building Barrett Developments into what it is today. I studied his face, looking for signs of manipulation or hidden agenda. Instead, I found only straightforward concern and something else. A simmering anger not directed at me but on my behalf. Why would you help me? I'm just the soon-to-be ex-wife. Because you didn't deserve what he did to you. And because you're probably the only other person who might help me save the company without caring whether Alexander goes down in the process. The cafe had begun to fill with the lunch crowd. I felt exposed, vulnerable. I need to get my things from the hotel. And I should probably let Alexander think I'm considering his repulsive arrangement. Ethan nodded. Good. Keep him complacent while we gather evidence. Evidence? You sound like we're planning some kind of operation. He smiled. Not Alexander's practiced charming smile but something more genuine. Maybe we are. Call it a family restructuring. That afternoon, I returned to the penthouse with a carefully crafted mask of resignation. Alexander was waiting, Victoria notably absent. I've been thinking about what you said, I told him, not meeting his eyes. About family being everything. His relief was palpable. You've always been the reasonable one, Sophia. As he embraced me, I caught sight of my reflection in the window, and for the first time, I saw not just Alexander Barrett's perfectly curated wife, but a woman with a purpose of her own. That night I texted Ethan. I'm in. What's our next move? His reply came immediately. Meet tomorrow. 10 a.m. We make a deal that protects us both. The law office of Pearson and Associates occupied the 22nd floor of a nondescript midtown building, deliberately underwhelming for a firm that specialized in high-profile discretion. Catherine Pearson herself greeted me at the elevator, a woman in her 60s with a steel-gray bob and eyes that missed nothing. Ms. Morgan, she said using my maiden name. Mr. Barrett is waiting. Ethan stood when I entered the conference room, looking more put together than yesterday but still distinctly unlike his brother. No designer suit, just dark jeans and a navy button-down. You came, he said, relief evident in his voice. I said I would. I set my handbag on the table, removing the documents I'd photographed in Alexander's office. I brought copies of everything I found. Catherine spread the papers methodically across the polished mahogany, her expression growing more serious with each new document. These are SEC inquiries, she noted, tapping one letter. And these bank transfers, they're structured to avoid regulatory flags. She looked up at me. Mrs. Barrett, your signature appears on at least 4 of these authorizations. I never signed them. I believe you. But proving that will be challenging. Catherine removed her glasses. Your husband has created a significant liability for you, whether intentionally or not. Ethan leaned forward. What's our best approach? First, Mrs. Barrett needs protection from potential charges. Second, evidence needs to be gathered showing Mr. Barrett's activities without her knowledge. Third, she paused, looking between us, you need a convincing narrative to explain your collaboration without suggesting conspiracy. What kind of narrative? I asked. Catherine's smile was thin. That depends on what you two want the outcome to be. Ethan and I exchanged glances. We hadn't discussed endgames yet. I want what's mine, I said finally. 8 years of my life, my designs, my connections. And I want Alexander to face consequences. I want to save the company, Ethan added. Without Alexander at the helm. Catherine nodded, making notes. Then I suggest we draft 2 agreements today. One between you two, outlining your cooperation to uncover financial improprieties at Barrett Developments. And another for Mrs. Barrett to sign, formally documenting her lack of knowledge regarding the suspect transactions. The meeting lasted 3 hours. By the end, I had signed numerous affidavits denying knowledge of Alexander's financial maneuvers, and Ethan and I had a detailed agreement of our own. Our secret deal. We have 6 weeks, Catherine concluded, handing us each a secure phone. Use these to communicate. They can't be traced to either of you. Outside the office, rain had begun to fall. Ethan offered to share his umbrella as we walked to the corner where his car waited. Are you sure about returning to the penthouse? He asked. My offer of the beach house stands. I need to be close to Alexander's documents. And I need him to believe I'm compliant. I hesitated. Besides, Victoria moves into the guest house tomorrow. His expression darkened. I still can't believe he's doing this to you. Can't you? He's your brother. Which is precisely why I can believe it. Ethan's voice was bitter. Alexander has always taken what he wants and expected everyone to adjust to his reality. As his driver pulled up, I impulsively asked, "Why did you really come back, Ethan? You could have sold your shares, walked away completely." He was quiet for a moment, raindrops catching in his eyelashes. Some debts can't be paid from a distance. That cryptic answer lingered as I returned to the penthouse, finding Alexander in his home office. "There you are," he said, not looking up from his laptop. "Mother's arranged for a decorator to prepare the guest house for Victoria. They'll need access tomorrow." "Fine." I kept my voice neutral, noticing the stack of documents beside him. "Anything I can help with? You seem busy." He glanced up, suspicious of my sudden interest. "Just finalizing the Riverside project. Nothing you need to worry about. I could at least sign whatever needs signing. Save you some time." Alexander's expression softened with relief. This was the compliant wife he needed, eager to help, asking no questions. "Actually, there are some transfer authorizations." He slid 3 documents toward me. "Just formalities." I recognized the same pattern Catherine had pointed out. Transactions structured to avoid detection. With a steady hand, I signed my name, mentally photographing every detail for Catherine. That night, Victoria arrived with surprisingly little luggage for someone moving in indefinitely. Alexander escorted her to the guest house himself, returning an hour later. "Thank you for understanding," he said, kissing my forehead as if rewarding a child's good behavior. "This arrangement won't be forever." I smiled tightly. Family is everything, right? Over the next week, I performed the role of accepting wife flawlessly. I nodded sympathetically when Victoria complained about pregnancy discomforts. I feigned interest when Alexander's mother discussed nursery designs. I even attended a dinner with Alexander's father where they spoke about the baby as if it were a corporate merger finally uniting 2 profitable entities. All while documenting everything I found in Alexander's office after hours. All while meeting Ethan at Catherine's office to build our case. All while watching my husband sink deeper into his own lies, unaware that his fortress was crumbling from within. "We're making progress," Ethan told me during our 3rd meeting. "The SEC is interested in what Catherine has provided anonymously." "How much longer?" "A month, maybe less." His hand covered mine briefly. "Are you holding up okay?" The simple question, the first time anyone had asked about my well-being in weeks, nearly undid me. "I'm fine," I said automatically, then corrected myself. "Actually no. I'm angry. All the time. But it's clarifying." Ethan's smile was understanding. "Anger can be useful that way." As I prepared to leave, he said, "Sophia, our agreement, it started as a business arrangement. And now I'm not sure what it is. But I'm glad you're the one I'm working with." The admission hung between us, not quite personal, not merely professional. Something unexpected growing in the shadow of betrayal. "Sophia, darling, could you pass Victoria the cucumber sandwiches?" Margaret Barrett's voice carried that particular blend of sweetness and command that had taken me years to recognize as manipulation. The baby needs the hydration. I smiled mechanically and passed the platter across the extravagantly decorated patio table. Margaret had transformed her garden into a pastel wonderland for Victoria's baby shower, an event I was not only expected to attend but help host. 20 society women watched with barely concealed fascination as the wife and mistress performed this carefully choreographed dance of civility. "You're absolutely glowing, Victoria," cooed Elise Vanderwall, the biggest gossip on the board of the Metropolitan Museum. "When exactly are you due again?" "Early September," Victoria replied, one protective hand on her growing belly. "Right when the Westchester development opens." "How convenient," I murmured, earning a sharp look from my mother-in-law. Victoria had been living in our guest house for 3 weeks now. 3 weeks of excruciating small talk over breakfast. 3 weeks of watching Alexander shuttle between the main house and the guest house under the guise of making sure she's comfortable. 3 weeks of playing my part in this farce while gathering evidence every chance I got. "Sophia has been incredibly understanding," Alexander interjected, his hand possessively gripping my shoulder. "We're redefining family in our own way." The assembled women nodded appreciatively, as if my husband deserved a humanitarian award for suggesting I help raise his affair baby. "I need some air," I whispered, extracting myself from Alexander's grasp. In the kitchen, I leaned against the marble counter, breathing deeply. My secure phone vibrated in my pocket. "Ethan, new information. Urgent. Can you meet today? Me, trapped at baby shower from hell. Tomorrow morning? Ethan, I'll come to you. Riverside Park, 4 p.m. Walk your mother-in-law's ridiculous dog." I smiled despite myself. Margaret's teacup Pomeranian was indeed ridiculous. "What's so amusing?" I jumped, finding Victoria standing in the doorway. Without the audience, her carefully cultivated vulnerability dropped away, revealing the calculating woman beneath. "Just thinking about how absurd this situation is," I replied honestly. Victoria helped herself to a glass of water. "You know, I expected more resistance from you. Would you prefer screaming and hair-pulling? More entertaining for the gossip columns. At least it would be authentic." She studied me over the rim of her glass. "Alexander said you'd be difficult. Alexander doesn't know me as well as he thinks." Something flickered across her face. Doubt, perhaps. "He said you'd been distant for years. Obsessed with getting pregnant, uninterested in the business. And you believed that?" "I believed he was unhappy. And now? Is he happy playing house with both of us?" Victoria set down her glass carefully. "You think this was my idea? This bizarre living arrangement?" Before I could answer, Alexander's voice called from the garden. "Victoria? Mother's opening gifts." She straightened, mask firmly back in place. "Your husband doesn't like to be kept waiting." Later that afternoon, I escaped with Margaret's Pomeranian, Bentley, for my scheduled walk. Ethan was waiting on a bench near the park entrance, looking out of place among the nannies and joggers. "How was the shower?" he asked as I sat beside him. "Excruciating. Your mother outdid herself. She always does." He scratched Bentley behind the ears. "So Victoria's fully moved in?" "Completely. She's redecorated the guest house, instructs our housekeeper, and has Alexander at her beck and call. It's exactly as humiliating as you'd imagine." Ethan's jaw tightened. "I'm sorry you're going through this. What was so urgent?" He pulled out his phone, showing me a series of emails. These were in the Barrett Development server. Alexander's been communicating with offshore accounts under various aliases. But look at the signature line. I squinted at the screen. The emails were signed ANV Enterprises. A for Alexander, V for Victoria? Ethan nodded. They've been working together far longer than the affair. The timing matches projects where money disappeared. So this wasn't just about sex. It was about business. Exactly. And there's more. He swiped to another document. Chin Holdings acquired 3 properties last year that Barrett Developments had previously deemed unsuitable for development. Except now they're being developed, with Barrett financing. My mind raced through the implications. They're laundering money through her family's company. With your signature on the transfers. Ethan's expression was grim. Catherine says the SEC is particularly interested in the Riverside project. They've subpoenaed records. Alexander asked me to sign Riverside documents just last week. Did you? Yes, but I photographed everything first. We sat in silence for a moment, watching children play on the nearby carousel. I found something else, I said finally. In Alexander's email. Messages with his doctor from 3 years ago. About. I swallowed hard. About ensuring I didn't get pregnant. Ethan stared at me. What? He was taking medication to reduce his sperm count. All while I was going through fertility treatments. My voice cracked slightly. He never wanted children with me. Ethan's expression darkened with fury. That's beyond cruel. It's efficient. He needed me for my family connections and design skills. A child would have complicated things. Sophia. Don't. I straightened my shoulders. I'm past crying about it. He studied my face. You really are, aren't you? I'm learning to channel my anger productively. Speaking of which, I pulled out my own phone, showing him photos I'd taken of Alexander's desk calendar. Victoria has a doctor's appointment tomorrow at 2. Alexander always accompanies her. The safe in his office. I need the combination. You're not planning to break in? Not breaking in if I live there. Ethan laughed softly. You're full of surprises, Sophia Barrett. Morgan, I corrected. I'm going back to my maiden name as soon as this is over. His eyes held mine for a moment too long. It suits you. That evening, Alexander and Victoria hosted his parents for dinner in the main house. I watched them interact. The easy familiarity, the inside jokes, and realized they'd been a unit long before I discovered the affair. Alexander mentioned you've been helping with some business documents lately, his father said, eyeing me curiously. Very uncharacteristic. I've realized there's a lot about the company I should understand better, I replied. Given that it's family. Victoria tensed slightly. Alexander handles the business side perfectly well. Of course he does, I agreed pleasantly. But as he keeps reminding me, we're all in this together now. Alexander raised his glass. To family, however we define it. As we clinked glasses, I caught Victoria watching me with newfound wariness. Good. Let her wonder what I knew. Let her worry about what I might do. The game was changing, and for the first time I was writing the rules. The annual Barrett Foundation Charity Gala, Alexander announced over breakfast, sliding an embossed invitation across the table. This year's theme is Family Legacy. Father thinks it's the perfect opportunity to present a united front before Victoria's condition becomes obvious to everyone. I examined the invitation, thick cream cardstock with gold foil lettering announcing the event just 3 weeks away at the Plaza Hotel. Every year, the gala gathered New York's elite to celebrate the Barrett family's philanthropic endeavors while conveniently showcasing their latest real estate ventures. You want me to help plan it? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. Alexander looked relieved at my apparent cooperation. Mother suggested you oversee the design elements as usual. Victoria will handle the guest list. Of course she will. I sipped my coffee, watching him over the rim. Any particular message we're trying to convey this year? Strength through innovation. Tradition meeting modernity. He straightened his already perfect tie. The company's facing some public relations challenges after the Riverside delays. This gala needs to restore confidence. I'll start working on concepts today. When Alexander left for his office, I immediately texted Ethan on our secure phone. Me Barrett Gala in 3 weeks. They're using it for damage control. His response came minutes later. Ethan, perfect timing. Catherine says SEC moving soon. Meet at her office 2 p.m.? In Catherine Pearson's minimalist conference room, we gathered around documents spread across the table. The last 4 weeks of evidence collection had produced a damning picture of Alexander's activities, and Victoria's complicity. The SEC is preparing to move on the Riverside project first, Catherine explained, tapping a folder. Their investigation will likely trigger broader scrutiny of Barrett Development's other ventures. How soon? Ethan asked. 2 to 3 weeks. They're being methodical. Catherine turned to me. Mrs. Barrett, your documentation has been invaluable. However, there's one area where we still lack concrete evidence. The offshore accounts, I supplied. Exactly. We know they exist, But we need access codes or transaction records to definitively link them to Alexander and Victoria. Ethan leaned forward. What about the company servers? Wiped clean last week, Catherine replied. Someone's covering tracks. I thought of the safe in Alexander's office. I might know where to look. Ethan studied my face. You've got that expression again. What expression? The one that means you're planning something slightly terrifying. I smiled despite myself. The gala. It's our opportunity. Everyone will be there, including the board and major investors. Ethan caught on immediately. Public exposure. Maximum impact, I agreed. If we time the SEC announcement to coincide with the gala. We need absolute certainty before making accusations in a room full of powerful people, Catherine cautioned. One misstep and you'll both be facing defamation suits at minimum. Then we get the final evidence before the gala, I said simply. As I outlined my plan, Ethan's expression shifted from concern to reluctant admiration. By the time I finished, even Catherine looked impressed. It's risky, she acknowledged. But potentially effective. I'll need your help, I told Ethan. Both before and during the gala. You have it. The intensity in his eyes made my breath catch. Whatever you need. Back at the penthouse, I found Victoria alone in the kitchen, looking uncharacteristically pale. Alexander's not here, she said, one hand pressing against her belly. Are you all right? Despite everything, the instinct to help was automatic. She winced. Just some pain. The doctor said it's normal. I poured her a glass of water. Sit down before you fall down. Victoria looked at me suspiciously but accepted the water and chair. Why are you being nice to me? Humanitarian impulse. It'll pass. A ghost of a smile crossed her face before another wave of pain made her gasp. I recognized the pattern from my own pregnancy before the miscarriage. I'm calling Alexander, I decided, reaching for my phone. No. Victoria grabbed my wrist. He's in an important meeting with investors. He'll be angry if I interrupt. That single statement revealed more about their relationship than any document could. I'm driving you to the hospital, I said firmly. This isn't normal pain. In the sleek interior of my Range Rover, Victoria was uncharacteristically quiet until we hit midtown traffic. He told me you couldn't have children, she said suddenly. That it was why your marriage was failing. I kept my eyes on the road. Our marriage was failing because he was sleeping with you. It wasn't like that. Not at first. He stared out the window. I really thought he loved me. And now. She laughed bitterly. Now I know better. This baby is my insurance policy. At the hospital, they whisked Victoria away immediately. I found myself pacing the waiting room, torn between hoping she was all right and wondering how this would affect our plans. After an hour, a doctor approached. Mrs. Barrett? Your sister-in-law is stabilized. Threatened miscarriage, but we've stopped the contractions. Relief washed over me, not for Victoria, I realized, but for the innocent child caught in this twisted web. Can I see her? Victoria was lying in bed, monitors beeping steadily around her. They're keeping me overnight for observation, she said when she saw me. Alexander's furious. Because you're in the hospital? Because I'm causing unnecessary drama before the gala. Her voice was hollow. The baby and I are just props in his perfect life narrative. I studied her face, seeing for the first time not just my husband's mistress but another woman manipulated by Alexander Barrett. He doesn't care about either of us, I said quietly. He cares about appearances and control. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. I was so stupid. I thought. She trailed off, then looked at me directly. There's something you should know. About Alexander's finances. About what we've been doing. My heart raced. I'm listening. By the time Alexander arrived, Victoria and I had reached an unexpected understanding. Not friendship, too much stood between us for that, but a tentative alliance against a common enemy. What are you doing here? Alexander demanded when he saw me at Victoria's bedside. Being a decent human being, I replied. You should try it sometime. His jaw tightened. We need to talk. Outside. In the corridor, he gripped my arm. What game are you playing, Sophia? No game. Victoria needed help, I helped her. Stay in your lane. The gala is in 2 weeks and I need everyone following the script. I met his gaze steadily. Or what, Alexander? His fingers dug deeper. Or I'll remind you exactly what you stand to lose. As he stalked away, my phone buzzed with a message from Ethan. Everything's set for tomorrow night. Ready when you are. I typed back a single word. No. The Plaza Hotel's grand ballroom glittered with New York's elite, champagne flowing freely as string music drifted above carefully modulated conversations about stock portfolios and summer homes. The family legacy theme manifested in enormous Barrett family photos projected on silk screens, a carefully curated visual history that presented 3 generations of business success and philanthropic generosity. I'd outdone myself with the design, I had to admit. The Barrett legacy deserved a beautiful backdrop for its very public dismantling. You look stunning, Margaret Barrett said as she air-kissed my cheeks. Though perhaps a touch too dramatic for the occasion? Her eyes swept critically over my crimson gown, a deliberate departure from the pastels I'd worn as Alexander's compliant wife. I thought it was time for something bold, I replied, touching the diamond pendant at my throat, the one containing a microSD card with copies of every damning document I'd collected. Alexander appeared at my side, immaculate in his tuxedo. The governor just arrived. I need you for introductions. As we crossed the room, people parted deferentially, smiling and nodding at the perfect Barrett couple. Every now and then, someone would glance toward the entrance, anticipating Victoria's arrival. She's making an entrance at 8, Alexander murmured, following my gaze. Doctor's orders to arrive fashionably late. The pregnancy complications have been stabilized. How convenient. His fingers tightened around my waist. Play your part tonight, Sophia. Tomorrow we can discuss adjustments to our arrangement. I look forward to it, I replied truthfully. At precisely 8 o'clock, conversation momentarily hushed as Victoria entered, resplendent in a flowing empire waist gown that elegantly showcased her pregnancy. The board members nodded approvingly, the Barrett heir apparent making its public debut. I checked my watch. Ethan would be arriving soon. Darling, Alexander's father called out. It's nearly time for your speech. The donors are getting restless. Alexander squeezed my hand. A warning, not affection. Wait by the stage. I'll need you beside me when I announce the new Barrett Family Foundation initiative. I nodded demurely and made my way toward the stage, pausing to exchange pleasantries with board members and investors. I'd just reached my designated position when the ballroom doors opened once more. Ethan Barrett stood in the entrance, tailored in charcoal gray rather than black tie, looking like the revolutionary to Alexander's establishment. Behind him stood Catherine Pearson and 2 stern-faced men I recognized from the SEC photos she'd shown me. A ripple of whispers spread through the crowd. Ethan hadn't attended a Barrett event in years. Alexander froze mid-conversation, his champagne glass suspended halfway to his lips. What is he doing here? Supporting family legacy, I said softly. Isn't that tonight's theme? Victoria, standing nearby, paled visibly. She'd been avoiding my eyes all evening, our hospital alliance apparently forgotten in the glittering reality of Barrett privilege. Ethan moved through the crowd with purpose, nodding politely but making directly for us. The SEC representatives remained by the door, a clear message to anyone who understood their presence. Alexander. Father. Mother. Ethan greeted each family member with cool politeness before turning to me, his eyes warming. Sophia. You look remarkable. You're not welcome here, Alexander hissed. This is a private event. Actually, as a significant shareholder in Barrett Developments, I have every right to be here. Ethan's voice carried just enough to attract attention from nearby guests, especially given the announcement. Alexander's father stepped forward, face flushed with anger and embarrassment. What announcement? This evening's program has been carefully planned. I believe he means my announcement, I interrupted, earning shocked looks from both Barrett men. Alexander's laugh was brittle. Sophia, now isn't the time for whatever this is. On the contrary. Catherine Pearson appeared at Ethan's side. The timing is quite deliberate. At that moment, the event coordinator tapped Alexander's shoulder. Sir, we're ready for your speech. Alexander straightened his already perfect tie. We'll deal with this disruption afterward. For now, let's maintain appearances. He turned to me, voice low. Whatever you're planning, I suggest you reconsider. Immediately. As he strode toward the stage, Victoria sidled up to me. What are you doing? She whispered frantically. We had an agreement. Yes, we did, I replied calmly. And I'm honoring it. Your immunity for your testimony. Before she could respond, Alexander's voice boomed over the sound system. Distinguished guests, valued investors, dear friends. Welcome to the annual Barrett Foundation Gala. The crowd applauded politely as he launched into practiced remarks about philanthropy and vision. I listened with half an ear, watching the SEC representatives position themselves near the exits. Catherine nodded almost imperceptibly. Everything was in place. And now, Alexander continued, I'd like to invite my wife, Sophia, to join me on stage as we announce an exciting new initiative. That was my cue. I moved toward the stage, feeling curiously calm. 8 years of playing the perfect wife had prepared me for this final performance. Alexander's smile faltered slightly as I took my place beside him instead of slightly behind, as was our usual arrangement. The Barrett Legacy Fund, he announced, will support underprivileged youth interested in real estate development. My wife has been instrumental in designing this program. I leaned toward the microphone. Actually, I've been instrumental in designing something else entirely. The ballroom went silent. Ladies and gentlemen, I continued, my voice steady, as a director of Barrett Developments, I have a fiduciary responsibility to report malfeasance. What you're about to see represents 3 months of investigation into financial irregularities that threaten not only our company but potentially your investments as well. Alexander lunged for the microphone, but Ethan was faster, stepping between us. The SEC has been provided with evidence of systematic fraud, he added, including offshore accounts, shell companies, and misappropriated investor funds. On the massive screens where Barrett family portraits had been displayed, documents now appeared, damning evidence in elegant typography. Victoria stood frozen in the center of the ballroom, one protective hand on her belly as her role in the scheme was projected for all to see. This is absurd, Alexander sputtered. These are fabrications. Your signature is on every document, I interrupted. As is Victoria's. As is mine, though forged in many cases. The murmurs grew louder as investors recognized their projects listed among the fraudulent schemes. Alexander's father pushed forward. You've destroyed this family, he growled at me. No, Ethan replied. Alexander did that. Sophia is saving what's left of it. Security personnel, not Barrett Security but federal agents, began moving through the crowd toward Alexander. He looked wildly around the room, seeking escape or allies, finding neither. His gaze locked with mine. You planned this all along, he said, comprehension finally dawning. Every concession, every agreement, you were just buying time. I smiled, removing my wedding ring and placing it on the podium between us. Family is everything, Alexander. You taught me that. 6 months after the gala that Manhattan's elite still referred to as the Barrett catastrophe, I stood in the empty industrial loft that would soon become the headquarters of Morgan Design Studio. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the potential I'd seen the moment my real estate agent showed me the space. The contractor says they can start the renovations next week, said my assistant, scrolling through her tablet. The permits just cleared. Perfect timing, I replied, running my hand along the exposed brick wall. We need to be operational before the Tribeca project presentation. It still felt surreal sometimes, having my own design firm, making decisions without seeking approval, hearing people refer to me as Ms. Morgan rather than Mrs. Barrett. The divorce had been finalized 3 months ago, remarkably quick given the circumstances. Alexander's arrest and subsequent indictment had stripped away his usual tactics of delay and manipulation. My phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. Meeting with board just finished. Call when you can. The aftermath of the gala had been chaotic but ultimately productive. With Alexander and his father both facing federal charges, Barrett Developments had needed immediate leadership. Ethan, with his 15% ownership and unexpected support from several board members, had stepped in as interim CEO. Together we'd worked to stabilize the company while disentangling my personal assets from the Barrett empire. Take the rest of the day off, Jenna, I told my assistant. We've got a busy week ahead. Once alone I called Ethan. How did it go? I asked when he answered. Better than expected. The board voted unanimously to remove interim from my title. Congratulations, CO Barrett. He laughed softly. Still feels strange. Like I'm playing a role in someone else's life. I know the feeling. Are you at the new space? I could bring dinner by later. We should celebrate. The suggestion hung in the air, weighted with possibility. Over the past 6 months, our relationship had evolved from strategic alliance to genuine friendship to something neither of us had quite defined. I'd like that, I said finally. Later that evening, sitting on moving blankets spread across my empty office floor, Ethan and I shared Thai food straight from the containers and reflected on how much had changed. Victoria had the baby last week, he mentioned casually. A boy. I set down my chopsticks. How do you know that? She called me. Wanted to know if the trust fund we set up was still valid despite everything. After her testimony had helped secure Alexander's indictment, Victoria had been granted immunity and a modest trust for her child who was, after all, a Barrett by blood. What did you tell her? That the child is innocent of his parents' actions. The trust stands. Ethan studied my face. Does that bother you? I considered the question honestly. No. The baby deserves security regardless of how he came into this world. She asked about you too. That surprised me. What did she want to know? If you were still designing. She mentioned you had promised to help her find a job once everything settled. I remembered our conversation in the hospital, Victoria's tearful confession about Alexander's manipulations, her genuine remorse. I did promise that. I'll call her tomorrow. Ethan reached across the space between us, his fingers brushing mine. You constantly surprise me, Sophia. Your capacity for forgiveness, for moving forward without bitterness. Don't mistake practical compassion for sainthood, I corrected him. I haven't forgotten or fully forgiven. I've just chosen not to let it consume me. Still, it's remarkable. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Ethan spoke again. I saw your doctor yesterday. My head snapped up. Pie doctor? Why? I wanted to understand what Alexander did. The fertility treatments, the medication he was taking. Ethan's expression was carefully neutral. Dr. Winters confirmed what we suspected. There was never anything wrong with your reproductive system. Though I'd already come to this conclusion, hearing it confirmed brought a fresh wave of emotion. Alexander sabotaged everything, I said quietly. 3 years of treatments, tests, hope, disappointment, all orchestrated by my husband. Ex-husband, Ethan corrected gently. Ex-husband, I agreed, finding unexpected comfort in the term. Dr. Winters also said something else. Ethan hesitated. There's no medical reason you couldn't have children if that's still something you want someday. The possibility settled over me like a warm blanket. Not an immediate desire, but a future not permanently closed as I'd believed. Someday, I echoed. Maybe. The following Sunday, I received an unexpected text from Margaret Barrett, inviting me to brunch. Curiosity overcame my initial instinct to refuse. The Barrett matriarch looked older, the events of the past months etched into new lines around her eyes. Her usual armor of perfection showed cracks, hair slightly less immaculate, jewelry more subdued. Thank you for coming, she said stiffly as I sat across from her at her favorite Upper East Side restaurant. I was surprised by the invitation. She nodded, hands fidgeting with her napkin. I've been doing a lot of reflection. About the kind of mother I've been. The kind of person. Her eyes met mine. I owe you an apology, Sophia. Many, in fact. Of all the outcomes I'd imagined from the Barrett scandal, Margaret Barrett's remorse had never figured into my calculations. We saw Victoria's baby yesterday, she continued. My first grandchild. It made me think about family, about legacy, what those words really mean beyond business success. And what did you conclude? That I failed spectacularly. Her smile was sad but genuine. But it's not too late to do better. I wasn't ready to forgive Margaret, not yet, but I recognized the courage it took for her to reach out. Ethan mentioned you're helping Victoria find employment, Margaret said. That's generous. It's practical. She has a child to support. Indeed. Margaret hesitated. And you and Ethan? The board members gossip. We're figuring it out, I answered honestly. Slowly. 3 months later, on the day of my design firm's first major project launch, Ethan arrived at my apartment with coffee and croissants. Nervous? He asked as I reviewed my presentation. Excited, I corrected. This is entirely mine. My vision, my team, my execution. He smiled, that particular smile that seemed reserved only for me. I never doubted you. Liar. You had plenty of doubts when we first hatched our plan. About the plan, yes. Never about you. The warmth in his eyes made me set down my notes. Over the past year, we'd carefully navigated the transition from conspirators to friends to tentative romantic partners, both wary of moving too quickly after all that had happened. I have something for you, he said, pulling a small velvet pouch from his pocket. Not a ring, he added quickly, seeing my expression. Not yet. We have time. Inside was a delicate gold key on a chain. It's symbolic, he explained. A new door opening. Whatever you want it to be. I closed my fingers around it, feeling the weight of possibility. What do you want it to be? A beginning, he said simply. One where we write the rules together. That evening, surrounded by colleagues and clients celebrating the successful launch, I caught sight of my reflection in the office windows. A woman I was still getting to know but liked immensely. Not defined by being a Barrett or even by the scandal that had freed me, but by choices entirely my own. My phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. The designs you sent are perfect. Starting the interview at the firm tomorrow. Thank you for everything. Across the room, Ethan was deep in conversation with an investor, his hands animated as he described some vision or another. He caught my eye and smiled. I touched the key hanging around my neck. Not a fairy tale ending, I knew better than to believe in those now, but something stronger. A life being rebuilt on truth with possibilities stretching before me like an open road.